Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. Now, I haven't really been able to play a lot last week, some real life stuff rolled through, but you know, all of that should be on the downhill at the moment, so we should have more and more time in the upcoming weeks. And of course we'll have a small patch next week as well, which should have a lot of bug fixes in it. And I woke up to the first snow this morning, so that's pretty cool to have a completely white neighborhood for the first time so far this winter. And yeah, it's pretty fun. I might actually go outside a little bit as well later today. We are here for the market, of course, so let's jump in. And as always, we'll start with plex. That's going to be at 50 seconds. Like that, and they're up a little bit, so just one seller coming in at 1,023,000, but then 1,048,000 is pretty much current price range in Cheetah for the sellers. 1,008,000 is only one buyer as well, so around 1 billion for the buyers, which is, well, quite a decent margin of almost 50 million. If you look at the price chart here, you can see that after going down substantially since November, there was some hesitation since the beginning of the year, and now here for the first time we have the median daily prices and the 5-day moving average crossing the 20-day moving average back on the upswing. One thing that might have a decent impact on this is, of course, the monthly economic report that came out, which showed that the ISK faucets are basically out of control a little bit. There's a lot of ISK coming into the game at the moment through ratting and activities like that. I think it's like super ratting that is supposed to be really profitable at the moment. Moving on to the pilot trade certificate, that is quite interesting. Last week we had a little bump up crossing the 20-day moving average, but now we're back on the downtrend towards 1 billion ISK on average. Here the sellers though are at 1,072,000, the buyers are at 970 million, and even a wider margin than plex for something that does pretty much the same thing is pretty unusual, to be honest. So there seems to be just some hesitation on the market at the moment, I would say. There are some forces that indicate plex prices might actually go higher, and then there are some people that are expecting plexes to go lower apparently. So sometimes they're dumping, sometimes people are buying frantically, which makes for a bit of a divided picture and actually a pretty wide margin between the buyers and the sellers. I'm sure you're curious about what's happening outside of Cheetah, since a lot of these trade hubs and larger structures in perimeter are being hit by pandemic horde at the moment. So let's take a look at that. Still a pretty decent margin here, 1,020,000. For the sellers is the cheapest plex you can pick up in a perimeter trade hub at Planet 5, at the Taurus, sorry. And then for the buyers, let's take a look at that. These are coming up to 1,008,000 pretty much. No, that's still in station. Yeah, 1,009,000. So, you know, not that many buyers. That's actually not a good sign for the people that are actively trading in these player-owned structures. Of course, they can get destroyed. Your stuff goes to asset safety, but it's locked in there for a little bit. And as a result, I think a lot of people still prefer the safety of Cheetah 4.4 over these trading citadels. Still, that is a pretty decent markup. So especially if you want to buy a plex to use it, you should of course buy it in perimeter and not in Cheetah itself. When it comes to trading, it depends a little bit. If you have the patience to risk your plex in an asset safety in case of a war deck or something like that, then of course you can try to eke that extra little bit of profit out of a trade hub in perimeter. Otherwise, you're probably better off just sticking to Cheetah if you want to, for instance, be able to unload at any moment and be sure that everything is absolutely safe. Next up, pallet body resculpt. Let's take a look at that one, although it tends to be a very small market that does its own thing. 285 million for the sellers, 256 for the buyers, and a slight uptick from a pretty low price point of 230 million. We're now going up to 280. We can also see an increase in volumes all of a sudden. Around 20 of them being sold is considered pretty damn good in the body resculpt market. So a little bit of demand caused the price to increase here. And sellers are slowly trickling in as well. At one point a few weeks ago, maybe even a few months ago, we were basically out of body rescope certificates on the seller side of things, but these are now slowly coming back. I guess once you get a good enough price, people are willing to, I think it is, dump a plex, create some Aurum, and buy a few of these rescope certificates to try and eke out a little bit of ISK as well. Next up, the skill extractors, right in line with plex, of course, going up, crossing the 20-day moving average. So a bottom of around 230 million seems to be the case at the moment. And we are up to 244.5 for the sellers, 232 for the buyers. So forced up a little bit. Volumes though pick up right away, 200 here. Look at that, that's 800 units in just 4 sell orders. And we're talking a full page here of sell orders in the last 24 hours as well. So there's definitely competition on the supply side as well. Volumes seem to be up slightly too, which is quite interesting. But of course, what we can see here mostly is that skill extractors follow plex very, very closely, since basically that's what you need in order to create skill extractors. You need some plex. Skill injectors next, those are finally falling off a little bit. Okay, at a high point of 630 million, now heading for 610. Bit of a bump in volume might indicate that will actually stop pretty quickly. Let's take a look at the sellers and the buyers. 630 million for the sellers. Just a full front page, not that much supply, but a little bit of a big chunk coming in here. 300 units just a couple of hours ago. The buyers are at 602 million, so this is basically a decently wide margin when it comes to skill injectors. Seeing the price fall a little bit though, I think is normal after the increase in price, which happened during a decrease in price for plex and the skill extractor. So that just meant more and more profit, more demand. At some point that has to stop, of course. If your actual production cost during this period here to here actually decreases, then this just indicates very strong demand and very nice profit margin for the sellers. But on the other hand, of course, at some point that is going to stop, and here we see the counter reaction a little bit. Maybe increased supply is causing this as well, but I honestly suspect not. I actually think that at some point the market says, you know what, this is starting to be a little bit too expensive for the skill points that that we would need to buy, and so they're holding off a little bit, or people start moving in because it becomes actually really profitable to dump a lot of these at that point. So there we go, 610 million currently on average, which is much closer to the buy orders than the sell orders. So I think that people are actually dumping some skill extractors for 600 million as well. So if you want to be certain to pick up a few of those, I would say put up a buy order close to 610, and I think you'll actually be able to find a few willing to sell to you. So that's pretty interesting, right? We see a bit of hesitation basically in the real life money related markets like plex, like injectors, like the multiple pilot train certificates. At first it looked like they were basically stabilizing towards the bottom, and then of course the long-term effects of probably decreased activity after the winter might start to show themselves, but we have a little bit of a bump on that road here at the moment with plex going up substantially. And I think that it is because of the reports in December that the ISK faucets are wide open at the moment in the game. Next up, let's look at some minerals. 9 minutes. Looks good. Let's start with titanium. That tries to jump up from 5 ISK. So we went as low as 5, even 4 point something. In the last week or so, we tried to jump up to 5, but now we're actually on our way back down. So in the maybe 10 minutes it took me, well, it's actually all right. 505 was the latest sell order, so someone comes in with a small one at 503. Buyers are at 494 though, and so I think on a day with a lot of supply where people just don't have the patience to put up more sell orders, they'll go straight to these 2 billion unit buy orders right here for less than 5 ISK, and that will probably mean average prices of less than 5 ISK if that's substantial enough. Sellers, they're trying, but 1.5 billion is not that much compared to all of the demand. So I would say that there is a pretty strong reason to believe that we'll never really go much below 5 ISK, because people are willing to pick up all of the titanium in really big numbers just below that. But it is also clear that supply is keeping the price very close to the 5 ISK at the moment as well. So I actually think that will move in a pretty narrow band in the foreseeable future. Buy right next. Yeah, my throat and my mouth is really dry as well at the moment, so I'm having some problems enunciating correctly, but we'll make it work. Here is buy right. Sellers at 712, which historically is pretty damn low. New sell orders still more than a front page. Yeah, almost 1.5 to 2 front pages here. 112 million, 140 million, 66 million, 40 million coming in here as well. On the buyer side of things, you can see that we go straight to 82 days here, 84 days here, and that's only one sell order, buy order of 105 million. So I would say still under pressure from oversupply, and here we start to move in that band between, let's say, yeah, that's not exactly 6, just below 7 ISK and a bit above 7 ISK. So here again, buyers at 690, sellers at 712. On a day with not too much supply, people will probably put up fresh sell orders, and buyers will be forced to go to those sell orders. On days with a lot of supply, people will be willing to dump some of their buy rights to the buy orders, giving you that average price below 7 ISK. And so this, I think, will also be the pattern in titanium and in buy rights so far. Bit of hesitation around 7 ISK, unless something drastic happens, of course. Mexalon next. That's a different chart, of course. Mexalon breaking out from 54 to a high point of around 70 ISK, but I think it wants to stay there. Yeah, 69 for the sellers, 64.37 for the buyers. Here you can see that the margin has closed quite a lot. The buyers have been forced up towards 65 ISK, so that's quite substantial. Mexalon should probably be your mining target if you're looking for more ISK per hour when it comes to high ISK mining. It's good to see at least one mineral research a little bit from the downtrend since the Ascension expansion. Isogen next, it's trying, but again here we're starting to see that pattern where around this price range, which is just below 70 ISK, we have this hesitation, and I think again here we have a couple of days where there are not that many new sellers coming into the market, and so we're going up towards 70 ISK. And after that, we have some more days where, well, sometimes sellers win out, sometimes buyers win out. Then we go up or down a little bit on the averages. But overall, we're staying at the current price range, which is maybe 65 is probably the price that everything is hovering around. Sellers are at almost 68, buyers are at 62.4. And as a result, yeah, 65 is probably an okay average on both side of things, but here you can see an average of probably very close to 60, and then here we have averages of close to 70, and again here we've got a couple of days which were probably well oversupplied, so the price is well below 65. Here we have a bit of hesitation after such low prices for probably around a week, so the price goes up above the 65 price mark, but I think that's what's going to play for now here. Just basically a bit of volatility in a very narrow band for these high ISK minerals. Noxium next here. Pattern is really starting to show up once again. So on the downside, you can see several days where the averages keep going lower and lower, well below the 5-day moving average towards 360. And a real bottom at 357, but then at some point, of course, suppliers say, you know what, I'm gonna hold off, I'm gonna wait a little bit because Noxium is getting ridiculously low, and now we're going back up a little bit with average daily prices well above the 5-day moving average once again, heading towards 381. And here we'll see sellers 381, 382, buyers 358, 359, something like that. And so you could say 365. Around that price range will be above that a little bit. On lower supply days will be below that if people dump their actively mined Noxium or their stocks and things like that. So I think that's looking to be the pattern in the upcoming weeks for the high ISK minerals. A bit of hesitation depending on are people selling a lot or not, because demand seems to be quite strong and decently stable at the moment. Then nullsec stuff, let's take a look at Zydrine breaking out quite nicely, going up to almost 1200 ISK, that's quite good. 11.93 for the sellers, buyers are at 11.45, so you can see that that margin is closing. Buy orders have to go up in order to pick up their Zeitrine, which is pretty good for me because I think I bought on the downtrend here after the summer, and so that should be a bit of profit, once again something to dump. Megasite had this pattern a couple of weeks ago, but is actually, after some hesitation, continuing that towards a high point of almost 1600 ISK, 1540 for the sellers, 1500 for the buyers. That's not bad. I sold, I think, just below 1500 on the increased price up until, was it here or no, the first one. Here we go. This first leg up towards 1400 is where I dumped most of my Megasite, and so now we actually have a second leg up to almost 1600. That's Celtic Energy offered a surrender. Okay, we'll accept that in a moment. So going up towards 1600, not bad at all, I would say. When it comes to Megasite, if you're looking to make some profit and you actually manage to buy here at the start of the Ascension expansion, definitely not bad, going for like 60% increase in price here in just 1.5 to 2 months. Not bad at all. I sold a little bit early, but I'm pretty happy because I also made a little bit of profit, and so now the pattern is repeating in Zeitrine as well. It's up to you to decide when you want to get rid of those minerals if you have actually bought them. And finally we have a Morphite as well, slowly going up but hesitating here at the tail end above 10,000 ISK. Sellers are at 10,224, buyers are at 9,685. So the best days are over again around the Ascension expansion, very low price point. I think I bought around this price range, in fact, for Morphite a bit earlier as well. Below 10,000 ISK is where I started make my moves on Morphite. So you can try to sell for a little bit of profit, or you can be patient when it comes to Morphite. Wait for a Tech 2 ship slaughter, and then you might have a better chance of getting an even better price, because yeah, just not that long ago we had, let's see, almost 11,000 ISK. So it's definitely possible to sell at a better price than what we've got at the moment, if you have the patience for it. Next up, let's move on to PI next, 1730. Okay. Starting with consumer construction blocks, averaging currently around 12,000 ISK. Yeah, 12,300 for the sellers, 11,000 pretty much for the buyers. Decently a wide margin. Price, despite what you're seeing on this chart, is still average. It's still okay to sell your construction blocks. We're just not in the high summer period here anymore for them, which were exceptionally good prices when you could get 14 to 15,000 ISK for construction blocks. Right now 12,000 is still a really decent price, an average price for construction blocks. Consumer electronics, these are under pressure a little bit again after a pretty damn strong summer. Currently selling for 10,800. Quite a lack of demand here, 10,000 one buy order. I think we are starting to get very close to potential buy territory for consumer electronics. The lack of demand is a very strong indication that we are oversupplied. First sellers coming in below 11,000 ISK. This is obviously under pressure, and if you want in on cheap consumer electronics, I would say put up a buy order between the buyers and the sellers at the moment. You're bound to be able to pick that up, and if you look at this 6-month chart, 15,000 ISK was possible this summer. Picking this up close to 10k at the moment is a nice 50% margin between that high point and the current price range. So consumer electronics, I think we're starting to move below average here, and I think if you want some of that cheap stuff, you could definitely place a buy order. Next up, coolants. These are going up in price, and in the last few days are stalling, right, heading back towards maybe 12.3 thousand ISK. Sellers are at, let's take a look at that, 12,500 to 12,800, 900 right away after just a couple of them, and the buyers are at 11,000 ISK. This is actually a really good price for coolants. I'm surprised that the low demand here is not causing prices to go down more quickly on supply, because coolants for 13,000 ISK is actually a really good price, a bit above average. Not the best we've seen so far this year, right? In September you could go almost for 15,000 ISK, but that was very short-lived, and here the current price range of 12,800, just below 13k on the chart, is actually a pretty high point for 6 months. So consumer electronics low, coolants pretty high, good time to sell, and it just takes gas planets, which are very common in order to produce coolants. Enriched uranium next. Okay, went pretty low towards 11, but still 12k was quite alright, and now we're actually going back up a little bit. You can see here on this part of the chart that we've been lower than this before. So currently sellers are at 13.2k, buyers at 12,700. So I would say that this is definitely still slightly above average despite what you're seeing on the chart. I think it's still definitely okay to be selling enriched uranium at the moment, because 12 to 13,000 ISK, especially on the seller side of things, more than 13,000 ISK is definitely a respectable price for enriched uranium. We've been quite a bit lower. Maybe I'll quickly take a look at that. There we go. We've been below 10,000 ISK. I would put the average at 12,000, 12,500. I think is actually an average price for enriched uranium. So here at the moment, with this resurgence a little bit, we were heading for a little bit below average, around average here on the lower part of this chart. But here the resurgence seemed to be quite good, especially on the seller side of things. So still okay if you have the patience to not sell directly to the buyers. Again, pretty low demand in the volume, in the number of buyers on this market as well. Mechanical parts working on a 6-month high point towards 12,500 ISK, 14,200 for the sellers, and that's just a couple of them, and the buyers are forced to 12,600 almost. Definitely a really good time to produce and sell mechanical parts. It only takes a barren planet in order to produce that, so one planet product going up like crazy here. Really good time to sell. Very nice to see the variety in the PI market once again. Oxygen then wasn't doing too good last week, and it's still slowly edging down on average. 434, we're probably getting towards average prices, maybe even a little bit below that if by sellers, sellers are forced towards 430 here in order to actually safely dump their oxygen stocks. Buyers are at 415, so this seems to be a bottom range of 415, 430, 440 is definitely pretty low for oxygen. I would be willing to hold on. You can see again on the chart here that we've been lower than this before, so maybe in a couple months with lower activity we'll have a better buy opportunity than now, but I wouldn't be selling my oxygen. If you're producing that, I would actually be building up my stocks for a better sell opportunity close to, let's say, 500 ISK or something like that. If you look at these charts, 500 ISK is definitely possible if you have the patience. Robotics next, slowly going down here under pressure, as you can see, towards currently sellers are at 94,000 ISK, buyers are at 88,000 ISK. Again, not that many buy orders, so the lack of demand is a bit strange, seems to be across the entire PI spectrum. But despite that, some of them are doing really strongly. So it's very interesting to see here again robotics under pressure since a pretty strong summer. So on average, we're probably still in the okay selling territory for robotics, but the lack of fresh buyers coming in, closing that gap, I think does indicate that on increased supplies or on lack of demand, all of a sudden we could go down quite sharply in the robotics market, I think. Rocket fuel next, the weird one. You can see here the average price is just all over the place, still doing okay around 12,000 ISK. Big volume spike here and there tends to happen. So sellers are at 11,600. No, that's just one of them. That's interesting again. Buyers, a little bit more of these, going up to 11,000 ISK almost, 11,600 and 12,000 for the sellers. You know, decently stable market overall. If you look at this entire 6-month chart, we're actually in a pretty high territory at the moment, relatively speaking, right? We started a little bit below 12,000 ISK, now we're around 12,000 ISK. So I would say rocket fuel seems to be like the most stable one, although it also shows the weirdest chart when it comes to the median daily prices. And so if you're looking for that very stable PI material to produce, I would say rocket fuel seems to be just 12,000 ISK, maybe a little bit above that or a little bit below that, but that seems to be the price. You can also see on the entire 1 year chart that it's a bit more jagged, but I think the scale is just a lot more narrow than on some of these other ones. Very stable, despite the weird chart apparently. Rocket fuel. Self-harmonizing power cores actually taking off a little bit, quite interesting. Maybe the siege of the perimeter structures is causing an increase in demand for people that are planning to replace their investments there. I think that's definitely a possibility. So sellers are at 2.5 million, a bit above that. Buyers are at 2.262, 2 million, 2.5 billion, 2.5 million, excuse me, and buyers are at 2.26 million. So decently small margin supply wise. It actually looks okay. This is still in the last 24 hours. In the last few days, full front page, and this is a lot. 120, 200, 200, 200, 160, 150, 250, 250 again. So I think that there is a bit of extra demand coming in from somewhere. I suspect the perimeter siege could have a lot to do with that. Superconductors next. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, a bit of a resurgence, but you can see that's already being squashed as well. I can see increased demand, so 14,500 for the sellers, 14,140 for the buyers. On the 1 year chart, we can see that this is definitely still a pretty good price, because the 3 first months here were well below the current price range. So it's definitely a good time to sell your superconductors. But there's some hesitation on the horizon as well. I think it's strongly tied to structure materials. I think you'll need superconductors to make stuff like power cores, like mainframes and things like that. And as a result, there's a lot of supply and probably a bit less demand. Overall, it's probably slowly going to be under pressure as well. Test cultures next, working on a pretty good start of the year here. Currently selling for 14,000 ISK. Buyers are at 11,900. That's pretty good. You can see on the 1 year chart here that we're definitely above average. Test cultures, it's your time to sell, and just a couple of months ago you could have bought these for 6,500, currently selling for 14k. Definitely not bad, showing that the PI market again is a pretty damn interesting one. I'm really happy that I added this section. And the suggestions, all of these are suggested by viewers, are really great, because a lot of these, it seems like the refined PI materials know a lot of action and a lot of swings, which I like. And then here, finally, wetware mainframes. Very similar pattern, of course, to the power cores, because they're needed a lot in structures. So you can see here, since the Ascension expansion, a little bit before the Ascension expansion, we went up on the expectations for the engineering complexes, and since then we've slowly been edging down. And here at the end though, we're hesitating, we're going back up a little bit, which again I think is tied to the perimeter structure that will need to be replaced. So there you go, that's PI. Moving on to Tech One ships at 2820. 2820. So for Tech One ships, I think the picture is going to be pretty obviously down substantially in the last few months, and this is going to be the result mostly of the minerals going down, the high-sec minerals going down so hard. But we are starting to see some hesitation, so I think that a lot of alliances are reading the market correctly here. We can already see the first really big increase in price in the null-sec minerals. That's going to have a little bit of an impact, mostly on the bigger ships. It should increase the production cost a little bit. And so if this happens as well in high-sec materials for some reason, could be a CCP nerf, could be the war that is starting to cost and increasing demand a little bit for minerals, we could be close to a bottom when it comes to the production of Tech One ships here. And the Caracal is the first one where you can see that a big volume spike is happening, and at least some players are moving in on the opportunity to pick up very cheap Caracals here. So 10.1 no, let's say 10.8 million for the sellers, 9.4 million for the buyers. We were below 10 million last week. Which does mean that I think people are seeing that this could probably end, and the trigger will be the big increase in price in Untitled minerals, saying that, you know, be careful, these very low mineral prices across the board, that might be over at any time. And here we go, someone made a pretty big move on Caracals when it comes to volumes, pushing the sell prices up to 10.8 million. The Coercer next, that one has been a very small market, so I don't think we'll see too much movement. It's also a destroyer, so takes far less minerals to produce that. And if the bloody chart wants to load, that would be great. Dominic's, don't tell me that I just timed out. No, okay. Coercer, yes, price history. Okay, for some reason we're lagging a lot. So here the Coercer has been very flat. You can also see that it's a very small market. When it comes to the volumes, around 100 a day is not a lot for something so small as a destroyer. So this is just very flat, not much to say here. The Dominic's chart could be more interesting. God damn that lag. Okay, there we go. And it's again with the Tech 1 ship, so maybe I should switch those out a little bit, or see if that's just something that's happening. So the Dominic's chart is an annoying one because of that one data point here, but we can try to smoothen it out a little bit. And here we can see that just a couple of weeks ago, basically 10 days ago maybe, we're also reaching a bottom for the Dominic's price. And here I think is where the Megasite and Sidewind started to pick up pace a little bit. So we went as low as 160, I think. Here we try to go up to 170. We're back down a little bit, but still staying above 160. Sellers and buyers. Yeah, this is a little bit annoying. A little bit of lag on the GTA market right now. I'm sure we'll get through this. 173 million for the sellers, like 12, 13 million increase in price in a couple of weeks. And the buyers are at 156 million. I think this is the Untitled minerals increasing in price, triggering a bit of a bottom in Tech 1 production. Next up here we've got the Merlin. The chart is apparently coming back a little bit. The Merlin was pretty interesting when it comes to alpha clones, because you can see here around the Ascension expansion we had this big increase in price, increase in volumes as well. But unfortunately it was a little bit short-lived. We just couldn't maintain that premium on the Merlin market. And so now we're going back down towards 300 million. Yeah, it's a bit difficult to tie this one straight to the minerals, because it is a frigate, of course, and the frigates are the smallest of ships, don't need that many minerals, and as a result I think that those have the smallest impact from the mineral changes. Still pretty cheap at the moment, I would say. 330,000 for the sellers, 300,000 for the buyers. Pretty narrow margin, currently back at, well, a little bit below the previous average, I would say, of around 350 to 400 for the Merlin. So maybe the overall lower mineral prices have gotten us a couple 100,000 on the Merlin. Oracle next. Here we can clearly see that pattern of the Oracle going well below its average maybe 80 million or so, here dropping off towards a very low price range of 64 million on average, and here a couple of weeks ago, maybe 10 days ago, going up in price once again, showing that that bottom is forming, and that a trigger once again seems to have been the Untitled minerals going back up in price. So 76 million for the sellers, starting to head towards the 80 million range, and 65 million for the buyers on the Oracle. Oracle, of course, battle cruiser, much bigger than a frigate or a destroyer, and impacted quite more heavily by the mineral changes. Excuse me. Here's the Raven next. Again, very similar pattern since the expectations of the mineral crash here in October, and especially with the Ascension expansion, we went all the way down to 150 million. Here a bit back up and hesitating at the tail end. I think that is because the high-sec minerals are still hesitating. If those can actually go up, then we'll see increased price for the Tech 1 market. 162 for the sellers for the Raven, 150 million for the buyers. And then the Thrasher, that's a destroyer, but up in price just a little bit as well. That's quite interesting. I think the Thrasher is a pretty popular destroyer apparently, especially compared to something like Coercer. Yep, daily average volumes 300, 350, something like that. Definitely 3 times the Coercer market, and here we are seeing a slight uptick in price, maybe due to the mineral prices bottoming out, I would say. And then next up we've got the Tornado, which is a battle cruiser, a lot bigger. Again, look at that pattern. Minerals going down across the board, low point of 59.3 million, but the Nulsic minerals peaking back up here, 65 million. So that's quite substantial and quite interesting to see how closely tied to the mineral market the Tech 1 market is, and how closely the manufacturers follow that apparently, because people are very much aware when they are selling at a profit, buying for very cheap ships, and it's pretty active, which is good to see. But the Tech 1 market is a lot bigger than some of the other markets, and I think that's why it's harder to speculate on that one. It's harder to manipulate this market, and so the very strong correlation is between what's happening in the mineral market and what's happening in, and thus that will reflect what happens in the Tech 1 production market. So Tornado is going for 66.5 million on the seller side, 60 million for the buyers, obviously with a bottom average price of 60 million. We're up a little bit on the prices here again since the trigger of the Nulsic minerals. Tristan next, actually showing that same pattern. Daily volumes of that one is 400, so it's, well, for a frig it's actually not that big, but we can again see what I find very interesting here is the big volume spike right after the bottom price started to form. So I think some investors are noticing that as well. Sellers 455,000 ISK. So I think that basically stuff has been bought out up until a price range, because normally you get more than a full front page of Tristans. Buyers are at 386,000 ISK, going up a little bit as well, I think. Well, not by that much actually. So yeah, big volume spike, a bit of an increase in price. The interesting thing is how quickly will that gap be plugged? It depends a little bit, I think, in the upcoming weeks. If other minerals are also going up a little bit, then I think we'll see this only be plugged very slowly with a lot of close competition, and prices might actually stay at the current range. If, of course, Nulsic minerals would turn around, then I think we'll be able to make a lot of cheap Tristans very quickly, and this will get plugged quite quickly as well. So I think it's going to be important to watch the mineral market to see what Tech 1 ships might all of a sudden be really cheap. Like here, the Venture still going down, still going to lower prices, 200,000 ISK. Yeah, less than that, 185,000 for the sellers, 180,000 for the buyers. Very small margin here. Supply looking decent, including 1,800 of them coming in here. I think ventures, right, if you expect the minerals to go up in price, could actually be something to look into. Maybe not for a lot of ISK or something like that, but this is just a crazy chart. If you look at what the Dominics, no, not the Dominics, but if you look at what the Oracle is doing, if you look at what the Raven is doing, if you look at what the Tornado is doing, and then you know that a big chunk of the decrease in price here for the Venture has also been the free gifts. At some point, all of that will be absorbed by the market, and then we're going to go back up towards 300,000 ISK. Now you're buying them for half that price from the sellers, which is pretty crazy. So these cheap ventures here, at some point, I think they could start to be interesting if we look at the rest of the ships and the mineral market. And then finally, we've got the Vexor also edging even lower. That's interesting, 10 million to a 6-month low. Sellers are at 10.1 million, almost 10.2, and then the buyers are at 9 million. This is also one that at some point I think is going to start moving differently. Because of what's happening at the moment in the battle cruiser and the battleships already started a couple of days ago. So it's pretty interesting. Here the Caracal also inflection point, so I think Vexor will have an inflection point at any time at this point, and I think that the Venture is really standing out to me, that the normal average is well above the current price range, and they're trying to go even lower. I think because of the gifts, I think it could be okay to just try and pick up maybe everything below 200k or something like that. We will see. Next up, the Tech 2 market at 39.15. Let's take a look at that. So on the Tech 2 market, On the one hand, in order to get swings, you don't need too big of a market. On the other hand, in the Tech 2 ship market, apparently I think the smaller ones are where the action might be, because those are flown more often and lost more often in nullsec. So here's the Ares, unfortunately stabilizing at the current price range. I would say unless the buyers are well below 20 million, which they're not, the Ares unfortunately right now is neither in a sell or buy opportunity. So here this is a good buy opportunity. 21 million, you will have buyers below 20 million at this price range, and of course when you can sell for 25, 26 million, right, that's a nice little profit to be made there. But we're too much in between that. Here's the claw, very interesting. Look at that, big increase in volumes. You could have bought those probably in the last few weeks for around 20 million. Now sellers are up to fetching orders, 29 million. Buyers are up to 26 million. There you go. Tech 2 market alive in an interceptor market. Really nice volume spike, really nice increase in price here. Very good to see. You have a sell opportunity in claws, and I think a couple of weeks ago around this price point, when we were really continuously testing low price ranges here on these median daily prices, you had some buy opportunities at 21 million, I think. So there you go, some profit finally in a Tech 2 ship market. Very nice to see. Crow next, also going up in price a little bit. I think, yeah, interceptors in nullsec conflicts are very important. 27.8 million. Here, low average price of 22 million. Again, purchasing 21, 22 million. Maybe 21 to 20 million was probably even possible. Now selling 27.7 million. Buyers up to 24. Not as good as the claw, but a small sell opportunity as well. Ares next, interdictor. Here, 42 million. So if you can buy for less than 40, around 42, it's okay. 44, not exactly what I want to see anymore. It's too close to the sell order. So the Ares, again, too much in between, but you can see some volatility is possible in this market, just not right now. Flycatcher next. Again, the averages are slowly going up, so unfortunately I would say nope, neither sell or buy on this one. Heretic next, interdictor. Is that one doing something interesting? I like this chart, honestly. We've got a low point here of 45.5 million. We've got a high point of 58 million. Here again, we're reaching 56, 58 million. We're empty of those, so it's risky. It's a small market, really low volumes, but there is some volatility to be spotted here. If you have heretics that you bought around here, 45 for, let's say, less than 46, 47 million, then currently bring those to the market. It's gonna make you a nice bit of money once again. Hound next. Working on double spike, really nice to see here. I think last week I said Hound looked very interesting on the buyer side of things. I tend to be really bad with names, and so I don't always remember exactly where I said, yeah, Tech 2 could be interesting, but I think the Hound, I'm 90% sure that last week I said you could buy Hounds for 18, 19 million, and now they're selling for 29, 30 million. There you go, very nice profit to be made in this stealth bomber right here. On a big volume increase all of a sudden. So if you bought them last week, try to sell them now on the inevitable, of course, downtrend that we've got here. If you want to be sure, then just try to sell for 28 right now, a couple at a time. You'll get rid of those in no time, I think. Volume wise, yeah, 83 on a big spike, 60, 200s, yeah, 150 to 200 on a normal day, and here the spike was for twice that all of a sudden. Yeah, we're talking 440. So yeah, I think if you didn't go overboard, you bought maybe 10 hounds or something like that for 19 million, then yeah, try to sell them 2 at a time, and I think you'll make a nice bit of money on the downside here. Malediction next. Interceptor, unfortunately staying in between low points and high points. So yeah, this is, you know, full sellers, decently good buyers at 21.2 million. I would say nope, wait for a better buy opportunity here. Manticore next, also knowing a nice little double spike here, going up in price again to 27 million. Last week I think I was saying, yeah, Manticore maybe towards 22 million, but I was more hesitant. I was looking more at the Hounds. Still 26.5 million, obviously up in price a little bit as well. pretty decent opportunity. Nemesis next, another stealth bomber. I think that one was not looking good last week. And is still going down slightly up in the last few days, but here 20.5 million on average, 19.2 million. Maybe considering what the Hound and the Malediction have done, you could still try to pick up some of these. Nemesis below 20 million, selling at 23 million. It's looking okay. If all of a sudden these go up in price, you could try to buy them, but it's a bit risky as well, of course, because the Hunt and the Manticore are set to be dumped in the upcoming weeks as well because of these high prices. Purifier next, also up in price a little bit. Here we had a buy opportunity, 20 million, currently going for 24 million. At least there is some volatility, even if this is not going to make you all that much money. It shows that this market is alive at least. And then here the Saber, also going up in price, but not high enough to say that you're willing to sell what you just bought at probably 50 million or just below that. Currently selling for 54 million. No, closer to 60. Is that a possibility? There we go, 58 million is actually a possibility on a good spike. So here, unfortunately for the Saber, don't buy, don't sell, but at least some of the other ones are showing some nice opportunities. Good to see the Tech 2 market alive in at least its small ship section. Next up, Tech 3 markets, 45, 45. Okay, let's take a look at these. The Tenku didn't move, so I actually think that we're going to go flat on most of these. Still, Confessor, as you can see, when we're playing with very low prices, 36 million or less than that, volumes are starting to come in. So sellers are up to 38 million, buyers are at 31.5 million, pretty healthy margin. If you manage to pick some really cheap Confessors and you want just a couple million profit, I think you could try to sell at the moment, because this is bound to be higher than what we get at the moment. Yeah, 37 million. Yeah, it's around this increase in price here. You could give it a try, or if you have a lot of patience, wait for maybe a war or something like that, you could still try to pick up some decently cheap Confessors. This is a pretty wide margin, to be honest, 20%. Hecate next, going down to 6-month lows. That's quite interesting, 35 million on average. Where are the buyers at? 28 million, even less than that. Again, this chart screams, okay, pour some ISK in the Hecate. High volumes, people are dumping these like crazy. At some point this is going to normally I always have to speak with two words, of course. I don't like to give any definitive advice or anything like that, but to me this looks really interesting. High volumes, decreased prices, 6-month low prices, much lower than anything else on the chart. And you can pick those up for a crazy price of 28 million. At some point that should make you some money. Jackdaw, very similar chart here, again being dumped quite substantially. You can again pick those up for less than 30 million. I would say that's definitely not bad. Oh no, actually there we go, wrong chart. Jackdaw here, bit of hesitation, increased volumes, up to 40 million. You know, it's the same class of ship. You're buying these for 28 million and Jackdaws are selling for 40 million. I mean, I think that that is pretty important information here. So Jackdaw hesitating currently, but of course hesitating between 34 and 40 million, which is probably the new average prices for now. And then finally we've got this Vapel for the destroyers, after going really low to 31.5 million, now up to 40 million once again on increased volumes. So there you go, 38 for the sellers, 34 million, and this is the one that was hit by the nerf bat. So yeah, take a look at the Hecate. This is just pretty damn crazy. Next up, the cruisers. Here's the Legion. That one is stabilizing at the current price range of 140. Sellers are at 142, buyers 132. Okay, not much to say about that, except a bit of an increase in volume. But I think it's just basically going to maintain the current price range. Okay, stabilizing here. Interesting. Loki doing the same thing after going really low to 110 million. 130 at the moment, so 133 for the sellers, 123 for the buyers. Also stabilizing at the current price range. Proteus next, also stabilizing, but at 6-month low points. Still, Proteus had a bit of a premium on the others, so selling for 141, buyers at 134. also stabilizing at the tail end, and Tengu is going to also land at the current price range of 140. So the cruisers are actually selling 136, buyers are at 128, but all of them seem to be basically landing here on the cruiser market. Still, Tengu 6-month low, Proteus 6-month low, Legion, except for the one little bump, at a pretty low point as well, and the Loki 2. It's interesting. You could risk investments for the very long term because you never know what happens in the tech tree market, and it's a lot more risky. Personally, I like what's happening with the Hecate a lot more than these cruiser markets. Although, if you really have a lot of ISK and you don't know where to park it, maybe something like the Proteus and the Tengu also. I like the Tengu at 136, that's definitely pretty cheap. Buying them for less than 130 I think is never all that bad. So that's a possibility, but the Hecate I think we'll see a pretty big change in what's in the dynamic here by next week, to be honest. So there you go, that's the tech tree stuff. And for the extra product this week I am choosing myself. I'm going for pirate faction frigates. I'm pretty curious to see what those are doing, and that's going to be at 50-20. Okay, let's go take a look. It's been a while since I've checked something like that out, so let's go for frigates. Let's go for standards, I think, or is it? Yeah, faction frigates, there we go. Pirate faction frigates. Here is the Astero. Oh, that's nice. I remember last summer that the... actually, I'm going to extend that to with Sisters of Eve ships. Because I remember last summer, I never pulled the trigger myself. I was saving my ISK for the blueprint copies. That a lot of these Sisters of Eve ships look to be at 6-month low points at really good places. Then this increase was pretty timid. I noticed that one as well during the Eve talks. We went really low again to 52 million, but look at that, a bit of a resurgence here, 63 million. 62 for the sellers, 58 for the buyers. So you can see that the Astero has definitely climbed out of its slump, out of its summer low point, and that would have been a decent amount of money buying this for 50 million, currently selling for 60 million. That's bound to be some ISK in the pocket. Crewer next, first real pirate faction. Frigates actually have pretty low points after trying to test 57.5 million. We're now back down to, damn it, why don't you want to load? 43 million. Yeah, that's a substantial loss. Crewers, I would say, very low at this point. Volatility wise, 1 spike, 2 spikes, low points up down to 30 million, high points up to 60 million. This is definitely pretty interesting, but you can also see that it's not as volatile as what the Tick 2 market used to be. You used to have a really volatile Tick 2 market. This is not replacing that, but it's decently interesting to see low points at around 35 and high points at 70 million even. That is pretty crazy. There is some money to be made and lost in these pirate faction frigates apparently. Daredevil next, going to a pretty high point as well after a low summer. So in the summer you could have bought this easily for less than 50 million. Currently we're empty of those, 76 million. Man, look at that. If you have some Daredevils lying around, I would say bring those to Jita because you're making bank. Dramiel next, again very similar. Whoops, oh no, now we're possibly in trouble. There we go, load up. Dramiel, look at that again, weak summer. With a low point of like 32 million and currently 44 million. Sellers are at 46 million ISK. That's very nice to see. Increased demand for those seems to be pretty obvious, and you could have made a lot of money investing in the summer in these. Now I'm actually going to take a quick look at that. Yeah, there you go. This is the 1 year chart. Look at that. June, July, definitely 6-month lows. If you bought there, you'd made a lot of money. Here's the Daredevil chart. Look at that. Look at that incredible opportunity last summer. It's something to take note of. Here's the Crewer chart, not as pronounced, and here the dip is pretty bad, but you had this slight opportunity as well up into October. Garmer next. Again, look at this very weak summer here, August, September. Could have bought those for around 46, 47 million. Currently selling for 61 million. Man, that's a lot of money to be made there. Look at that. Lovely, lovely. Really good to see a pattern like that. Here's the Succubus next. Again, not as pronounced after this dip. Man, that's really pretty low. And then back up. Some volatility at the end. Quite interesting. but here the buy opportunities was around May. Okay, and then we've got the worm. No, not the same as all of the other ones, obviously. So that's quite interesting. Here is the Astero chart. Again, here is the very weak summer I was talking about with a second opportunity in October. And now we have a sell opportunity. Very nice. And so we're also going to take a look at the cruiser, which is the Stratios. Yes, look at that. Buy opportunity 200 million, something like that. Currently selling for 220. Man, that's a bit surprising. That's only 10% increase. That's not that great. That's not that great, to be honest. We need to go higher for the Stratios. And for the battleship, it's something different, of course, but we'll quickly take a look at that. Pirates. And here is the Nestor chart. Nestor at 1 year low, all-time low, pretty much, going for only selling 550 million, which makes the Nestor affordable, doable. I would be willing to buy a Nestor if I can find a use for it at these prices. These guys used to be $1 billion a piece, which was a bit much for a faction battleship. But at this range here, I think that's quite okay. You can also see that we are at a 1 year low. But if the Nestor, and then if what was happening with the damn it, me and names, with the Stratios is any indication, then I think it's just supply is very strong when it comes to Sisters of Eve ships. And the only one that's really made you a lot of profit is actually the Astero. So I'd be careful considering the Nestor chart a buy opportunity, just because of the nature of supply of SOE ships at the moment. That's all I want to say about that. But yeah, the most interesting chart, honestly, in this one, to me, would be stuff like the Daredevil chart and the Dramel chart. That's a lot of money to be made. That's a lesson to learn. Keep an eye on EVE activity, and these pirate frigates seem to be going very low and on increased activity very high. That is something that could make you a lot of ISK on a good trade. And there you go, guys. That's going to be it for this EVE talk. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I will see you next time.